The galaxy was falling into silence for years. The Council of Stars had warned of an enemy beyond the dark rim, a species that moved like shadows and left nothing alive behind. Planets that once shined with cities and oceans turned into dead rocks within days. Fleets that had stood for centuries were swept aside as if they were made of paper. World after world sent desperate calls for help, but no one answered in time. In the great hall of the Council, alien delegates spoke with trembling voices. They were rulers of mighty empires, yet fear had broken them. One said the enemy could not be stopped. Another begged for surrender. Another cried that the galaxy must flee still. One word was repeated again and again: Earth. But Earth had been silent for decades. Humans had left the Council long ago. They stopped attending meetings. They closed their borders, and their ships no longer patrolled the trade lanes. No one knew why. Some said humans had grown arrogant. Others whispered they had gone extinct. But the truth was unknown now as the galaxy burned. The absence of Earth was felt like a wound. In a hidden bunker on a Council world, a small group of survivors gathered. A commander with weary eyes, a young pilot with trembling hands, a scholar who still carried hope in old books. They argued whether anyone would come to save them. "The enemy is already at our gates," the commander said, voice heavy with despair. "No one can resist them. Not even if Earth still lives," but the scholar shook his head. "You do not understand humans. They do not fight for power. They fight when hope is gone. They fight when everyone else has fallen." Outside the bunker, explosions shook the ground. The shadows had arrived. The enemy ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Jagged black forms that seemed to drink in the starlight. They moved without sound. They struck with beams that tore mountains apart. No defense line stood against them in the sky above. The last defenders of the Council world launched their final fleet. Old cruisers, broken carriers, and desperate volunteers. They fought bravely, but one by one they vanished in fire. The young pilot in the bunker whispered, "This is the end." Then the ground stopped shaking. A silence deeper than fear fell. In the sky, new stars appeared, but they were not stars. They were engines, thousands of them, burning with white fire. The galaxy had not seen such a sight in living memory. An armada stretched across the horizon, rows upon rows of titanic ships. Dreadnoughts larger than cities, carriers that blocked out the sun. Sleek destroyers moving in perfect formation. Their hulls shined with the mark of Earth. Humans had returned from the lead ship. A voice spoke across every channel, every screen, every corner of the galaxy. "This is Earth Command, stand your ground. The fight is not over." The survivors in the bunker looked up. Tears in their eyes, the young pilot gasped. The commander could not speak. The scholar only whispered, "I told you, when all hope is lost, humanity comes." The Shadow Fleet, for the first time, hesitated, and in that moment, the galaxy felt something it had not felt in years: hope. The Armada of Earth began to descend, and the war for the galaxy was about to change forever. The sky was filled with light from horizon to horizon. The human Armada spread like a shield over the burning world. Thousands of ships moved with perfect discipline, each one carrying the scars of long journeys, each one shining with the mark of Earth. For the first time in many years, the shadows slowed. The enemy ships hung in silence as if even they were unsure. No fleet had ever faced them and lived. No empire had ever stopped them. Yet here, before their dark weapons could strike again, humanity stood in the bunker. The survivors listened to the calm voice of Earth Command. "To all Council forces, retreat behind our lines. We will take the front." The commander stared in disbelief. "They came," he whispered. "They really came, above the planet." The first line of human destroyers surged forward. Sleek black and silver vessels. Their engines burning brighter than suns, they opened fire. But their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Beams of blue light cut across the void, not scattering like old cannons, but slicing straight through enemy armor. The shadows reeled for the first time. Their ships broke formation. Chunks of their black hulls tumbled into space. The galaxy's survivors, watching from hidden shelters and broken stations, could hardly believe it. The young pilot in the bunker shouted with joy, "They can bleed. The shadows can bleed." But humanity was not finished. Behind the destroyers came the dreadnoughts, ships larger than mountains, their guns the size of towers when they fired. Entire enemy squadrons vanished in silence. Every blast shook the airless void, every strike was a message. Earth had not been idle in its silence. The Council once thought humans had withdrawn in arrogance, but now it was clear Earth had been building, planning, preparing for this very moment, yet the enemy was vast. For every shadow ship destroyed, 10 more appeared, their black forms sliding out of the void like a tide of death. They regrouped, their jagged weapons glowing, and they unleashed a storm of fire at the human lines. Explosions flared. Dozens of human ships were lost in an instant, but the Armada held its ground. Formations shifted, shields interlocked, and wounded ships were pulled back while fresh ones surged forward. It was not chaos, it was war crafted with discipline and will. From the command bridge of the lead human dreadnought, an admiral gave orders in steady tones, his eyes never wavering. Push them back sector by sector. Let them know humanity has returned. The galaxy watched. Scattered across broken worlds, survivors tuned in to human channels, their hearts beating faster with every strike. Empires that once hated Earth whispered the same words now. Hope in the bunker. The scholar turned to the commander. Do you see now? They did not abandon us, they were waiting. They were building an armada no one could match. But the commander shook his head slowly. This is only the beginning. The shadows are older than we know if they came here. It means Earth will face more than just this fleet. He was right. As the humans pressed forward, destroying line after line of shadow ships, something shifted in the darkness. A shape larger than anything yet seen emerged. An enemy flagship, its form twisted and monstrous, like a black mountain with wings. Its weapons crackled with energy that tore the stars themselves. Even the human dreadnoughts paused for a breath as it appeared. The shadows had shown their true strength. The battle was far from over, and as the colossal enemy ship opened fire, humanity's armada faced the storm head-on. The shadow flagship emerged like a wound in the stars. It was larger than mountains, its jagged frame glowing with unnatural light. Arcs of black fire rippled across its surface, every pulse sending a tremor through the void. Smaller shadow ships clustered around it like predators guarding their king. For the first time since the humans arrived, silence filled their fleet on the bridge of the lead dreadnought. The admiral stood without fear, but his crew felt the weight of what loomed before them. No one in the galaxy had ever seen such a ship and survived to tell the tale. The flagship fired. A beam of dark energy cut across space. It tore through 3 human cruisers at once, shredding shields and armor as if they were nothing. The explosions echoed in silence, broken ships spinning into the void. But the human armada did not scatter. Instead, the dreadnoughts moved into a wall, their shields overlapping, their cannons lighting up the darkness. Hundreds of beams cut through the swarms of shadow ships, clearing a path toward the monster at the center. In the bunker below, the survivors watched in horror and awe. The young pilot whispered, "No fleet can fight that thing." But the scholar leaned forward with shining eyes. "You do not know humans, they always bring something hidden. They never come unprepared." As if answering his words, the admiral gave a single command. Deploy the lance from the belly of the largest dreadnought. A weapon unfolded. It was not a cannon, not a missile, but a long, sleek spear of light glowing with blue fire. It stretched across kilometers, humming with a power no one had seen before. The shadow flagship sensed the danger. Its swarms rushed to block, thousands of black ships diving to shield their master. But humanity had come with more than one trick. The carriers behind the dreadnoughts opened, and from them poured countless human fighters. Small, fast, deadly, their engines burning white. They tore through the swarms like fire through dry wood, weaving between enemy beams. Striking with precision, the lance charged. The void shook as the spear of light launched forward. It cut through the dark like a blade through glass, striking the enemy flagship square in its twisted hull. For a moment, the shadows screamed, their ship spasmed. The flagship's surface cracked with burning lines, but it did not fall. Instead, it roared, the sound vibrating through every channel. Not words, but fury, and from its wounds spilled more black fire, wrapping around the lance and shattering it in a storm of sparks. The admiral's face hardened. "Again," he ordered. The dreadnought began charging a second lance, but the shadow flagship turned its fury on them. Dark beams slammed into the human line. Dreadnoughts shook. Destroyers were torn apart. Entire wings of fighters vanished in seconds. Still, the armada did not break. Every human ship fought as if their home stood behind them. They moved like one body, disciplined, unyielding in the bunker. The commander clenched his fists. "They're not just fighting for us," he said. "They're fighting for every world that burned before this." Yet the scholar's eyes narrowed. "No, they're fighting for something even bigger. They are fighting because humanity refuses to kneel." The battle raged, and the second lance fired. This time it struck deeper, piercing through the flagship's side. Explosions rippled across its hull, fragments of black stone breaking away. The galaxy held its breath, but the monster still lived, and as its wounds glowed with renewed fury, a terrible realization spread through the human fleet. This was not the only flagship. It was only the first. Deep in the void, sensors picked up more shapes moving. Vast shadows stirring beyond the edge of sight. The enemy had brought their empire. The admiral stood straight, his voice calm as he spoke to every ship. We are humanity. We do not run. Prepare to face the storm, and across the galaxy, those who watched knew this was more than a battle. It was the beginning of a war that would decide the fate of every star. The void trembled behind the first shadow flagship. New shapes emerged, each as massive, each glowing with the same black fire. The enemy had not sent one monster. They had sent many. The human crews saw them on their screens, enormous shadows sliding out of the darkness, and for a brief moment fear touched even their hearts. 4 more, whispered an officer. 4 flagships, but the admiral did not flinch. His voice rang steady. We expected this. Activate protocol iron shield across the human armada. Ships shifted, dreadnoughts locking into tighter formations, carriers pulling behind protective walls, destroyers weaving to form a moving barrier. The fleet became not a scattered force, but a single machine of war. The second lance was already charging, its glow lighting the void like a false sun. But the shadow flagships moved together, their beams tearing through space, their weapons striking in storms that shook even human armor. Dreadnoughts cracked, fighters burned, yet the humans pushed forward in the bunker. The survivors clung to every word that came through the comms. The young pilot trembled. They cannot fight so many. But the scholar leaned closer to the screen, his voice firm. Humans never fight fair. They always hold something back, and again, he was right. From the far side of the system, space itself opened. Out of hidden folds came more human ships, not just fleets but entire city ships, colossal moving fortresses, each one carrying thousands of weapons and millions of people. They had been hidden until now, waiting for the right moment. The council survivors gasped. They brought whole worlds with them. The admiral's command spread like fire. Release the guardians. From the city ships launched a new kind of weapon. Not fighters, not missiles, but massive automated drones, each the size of a battleship, shaped like blades of light. They swarmed forward in perfect unity, intercepting shadow beams, cutting apart swarms, forcing the enemy fleets back, but the shadow flagships pressed harder, their weapons burning through drones. Their fury endless, the admiral clenched his fist. Then we strike at their heart, the dreadnoughts aligned, and 3 lances charged at once. The void screamed as they fired, 3 spears of light piercing the darkness. 1 flagship shattered under the force, exploding in a wave of burning fragments that lit the system like a dying star. Hope roared across the galaxy. Survivors cheered. Even the commander in the bunker allowed himself a smile. But the cost was heavy. Human ships fell in the thousands. Dreadnoughts groaned under endless fire. Carriers were ripped apart, entire formations lost. The humans fought like a wall of steel. But steel can break. Still they held. The scholar whispered through tears. They bleed for all of us. They stand so we may live. And then the greatest danger came. The remaining shadow flagships drew together, their weapons joining into one colossal beam, black fire gathering into a storm strong enough to destroy an entire world. They aimed not at the human fleet but at the planet below, the council world where survivors hid. In the bunker, alarms screamed. The young pilot froze in terror. They're going to erase us, but before the beam could fire, humanity revealed its final shield from the lead city ship. A barrier unfolded, vast and shimmering, wrapping around the planet like a second sky. The black fire struck it, the impact shaking mountains, boiling oceans. But the shield held. For the first time in history, the Shadow's ultimate weapon failed. The Admiral's voice came calm and clear. Earth does not abandon its allies. The Shadow fleets howled with fury. Waves of ships crashing against the human lines. The war became chaos, light against dark, hope against despair, and through the storm, humanity's armada pushed forward. The commander in the bunker rose to his feet, eyes shining. This is not just a battle, this is the birth of a new age. But even as hope grew, sensors revealed something far more terrifying. The Shadows were not just attacking this system. They were rising everywhere across the galaxy. Fleets like this one emerged. Worlds fell, stars burned. The war had only begun, and humanity's armada was all that stood between the galaxy and the endless dark. The galaxy burned. Reports came in from every sector. Shadows rising from the void, their fleets consuming world after world, their flagships spreading fear across the stars. And yet here in this system, humanity stood, refusing to break. The Admiral looked at the battle map, endless waves of shadow ships pressing in, 3 flagships still alive. their power enough to erase whole empires. His crew waited for his command, voices steady despite the firestorm around them. "It is time," he said. "Activate Dawn Protocol." A hush fell across the human fleet. From the city ships, massive structures unfolded, not weapons but towers of light, each one humming with deep power. The galaxy's survivors watching from afar could not understand. They had never seen such things, but the humans had built them in silence. In the years of their absence, they had studied the shadows. They had learned their nature, and they had prepared something greater than any gun or shield. The towers linked together, forming a vast circle across space, runes of blue light running along their sides. The Admiral gave the order, "Fire the dawn." The circle pulsed, and for a moment night turned to day. A wave of pure light swept across the system, not a beam, not a weapon in the old sense, but a flood of energy that burned away shadow essence itself. Smaller enemy ships dissolved where they stood, their black forms unraveling into dust. One of the remaining flagships roared, its armor splitting under the flood, its body breaking apart into fragments that tumbled into the void. Hope surged again, but the other two flagships resisted, their dark cores glowing brighter, feeding on the destruction around them. They charged their weapons. Determined to crush humanity's final stand, the Admiral stood firm. All lances, full charge, every dreadnought powered its weapon. Every surviving destroyer lent its strength, and together the lances glowed brighter than suns. The shadows fired, two colossal beams tearing across the void. But the human shield flared again, bending but not breaking. And then the lances fired. Dozens of spears of light struck together, piercing the heart of the second flagship, splitting it in half. The explosion lit the galaxy. A dying star born in war, only one remained. The last flagship screamed, its dark body cracking but still alive. It lunged forward, tearing through human ships, its weapons striking like storms. Dreadnoughts fell, carriers burned, whole formations vanished. But humanity refused to give ground. The scholar in the bunker whispered with tears streaming down his face. "They fight as if they are the last wall between us and the void." And perhaps they were. The Admiral raised his hand. His final order clear. All ships converge. Every lance, every fighter, every drone target its core. Humanity stands here. The fleet obeyed. Fighters swarmed like fireflies. Drones crashed into the flagship's guns. Dreadnoughts fired lances one after another. The city ships poured their light into the dawn towers, until the void itself seemed to shiver under the force. The last flagship cracked, its body burning, its core exposed. A black sun pulsing with hate. The Admiral's voice echoed one final time. For Earth, for every world ended. The dawn towers unleashed their full power. The circle of light collapsing into a single point that pierced the core. The flagship screamed one last time, and then it was gone. Silence in the bunker. The survivors fell to their knees. Tears of relief streaming down their faces, the commander whispered. "We are alive," the young pilot sobbed. "Because of them, across the galaxy." The news spread like wildfire. Earth had returned. Humanity had faced the shadows. And humanity had won, not just for themselves, but for everyone. The scholar's voice carried the truth. This is the lesson: never again doubt the humans. When all hope is lost, they will appear. And when they appear, the galaxy will rise with them. The Armada, scarred and burning but unbroken, turned its engines toward the stars. The war was not over. Shadows still burned worlds. But for the first time in years, the galaxy did not tremble in despair. It stood in hope because humanity was here, and they would fight until the dark was gone.